Hey everyone, today on Feathers Off Road I want to talk about this KTM 890 Adventure. Specifically, I want to talk about where the GPS mount goes up near the TFT display. What I did originally was I found on Thingiverse and 3D printed this bracket. There is a version of this bracket that fits into the KTM factory mount, and I opted for a version that took brass inserts and then connected that to a RAM mount that I already had, and then also 3D printed this mount for a tablet so I can run a GPS with Gaia GPS tracking me. Problem is, I didn't make this design and there's a little bit of a wobble here. Even though this is very tight and there's brass inserts on left and right, it just doesn't hold it tight. So I have a different solution that we'll put in place. To get started, there is a single Torx 30 size screw that holds this windshield on. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off to get better access. You can see here there's a high and a low position for that windscreen. Just for future, when you go to put that back on, make sure it's in the same place. Otherwise, it's two more T30 screws left and right on this mount, and I will go ahead and unscrew both of those and pull this whole thing off. With those out, this will just pop out. Here you can see the two brass inserts that I was talking about and the nut that comes through the ram ball all the way through to the bottom. I've got a different solution for this whole thing, but you can see that there is a slight taper to this. It's not a square, and so the fit is a little bit tricky to 3D print. So I ended up buying an aluminum piece off of Amazon, and I'll use that for the very base. Here's a little closer look at what I had printed. This material is ABS on the right, and the orange aluminum base is the piece on the left. The whole pattern on the top of both of these is the AMPS standard 30 millimeters by 38. On the right, I had used those brass inserts. On the left, this is already threaded into the aluminum with M4 screws. So here's a little side view. You can see the brass insert. If you look close, it's just not held in very tightly into the ABS. Threading those is quite tricky. The ABS just wants to melt away. The ram ball on the right was a 3D print as well, ABS with a single M8 screw running all the way down the middle. I'm planning on taking that same ball that I printed and moving it to the left. This base that I printed on the left side is just simply a 3 millimeter tall AMPS pattern with a receiver for that ball that I had printed on the other side. So I'm going to move the ball from right to left. With that done, I'm a little worried about how tall this is sticking up. I should mention too that this ball that I printed is actually the same size as a ball you can buy from RAM. I just wanted to try and 3D print it since I already had the screw, but it'll have to be mounted before we can see if this is going to cause a weird angle for the tablet. The install is those same 3 bolts, T30 on both sides, T30 for the windscreen. I'm just going to snug this up a little bit. It does seem to be quite a bit more sturdy. I think this is going to end up working fine. It's a little bit tricky to do this while filming, but I'll go back and snug these up with the ratchet, but I don't want to over tighten these like crazy. I don't need these to strip out. But otherwise the fit is really great. Seems really strong. Way better than the other. This is looking pretty good. There's a slight bow in the base of what I had 3D printed where the screw is kind of pushing against that aluminum. I don't think this is enough to break it. I'll have to watch this as we go, but it's important to get this angle and everything correct because once the windscreen's on, it'll be hard to adjust the ram tightness. And again, for install, I'm going to put this back in the high position for me, and this is the same T30 screw. I'm just going to snug that up. I'll come back and tighten it with a ratchet. Everything's put back together. Pretty happy with the angle. Seems to be clearing the windscreen just barely. This aluminum piece is a lot tighter than the 3D printed one. I could just buy a ram ball that was an AMPS pattern. I already had the 3D printer and the hardware to do this, so I opted to just try this. We'll see how it holds up, but until next time, enjoy the ride.